From the island of Kauai, greetings of the Spirit to the Spirit. I think I agree with you that we should continue our 8 p.m. meditations. And so every day at 8 p.m. California time, let us continue living in the mystical body, but let us change the subject. And if you will check the reverse side of this fourth tape, on the second half of it, I think we'll do the meditation for the month. And our subject will be transportation, air, land, and sea. Another brief announcement about the seminar. It would be suggested to you now that you consider sending in your reservations before July 29th rather than wait. And the reason is that the inn at Avila Beach has given us a block of rooms for the students, but after July 29th, those rooms that we have not reserved, they will start portioning out to other guests who may want to stay there. And also, if you do not plan to live at the inn during the seminar, at least let us know that you are coming, so that before July 29th, we can set aside the required number of chairs. We don't want you to be disappointed, and we want to be prepared for you. Now today, because we are one, because we can be frank with each other and must be at all times, we're going to have to talk about things that are usually skipped for fear of offending anybody. And to me, the greatest offense of all would be to bury the truth. So if it seems a little rough, it's what we all must do and what we all must face. We've got to learn to identify the excess baggage that stands in our way. Your second birth is the secret of your progress, the secret that all great religions have taught, and the secret that many orthodox religions have refused to accept. Second birth removes the veil of illusions. It gives you a completely new universe to live in, a new body, new eyes, new ears, so that you can experience the eternal creation of God. Second birth lifts you right here into the kingdom of God on earth. It takes you above the so-called material powers of the world, above human limitations. And you are no longer at the mercy of these strange world forces that have been beyond your control. In this awakened realm, you are released from the temporary sense of life. You are no longer bound by the temporary sense of body. And you are able to live consciously in your permanent self, which automatically takes dominion over the elements of land, earth, air, fire, water, the powers of the world. This necessary evolution in consciousness brings you under a new law, a divine law, a perfect law. And it also eliminates all possibility of experiencing human death. While still appearing on earth, you are transformed invisibly. You are made one in consciousness with the infinite Spirit. And you are governed by divine grace even before you make your ascension in consciousness out of this world. Because Spirit can read what is in your heart. Some of you who are parents know that our parents, as well as ourselves, have been unaware that our true function on earth, as parents that is to teach the mystery of second birth to our children and to attain it for ourselves. As a result of this, most of the human race today, practically all of it, is victimized by death and conditions that lead to death. And although this transformation in consciousness has been attained throughout the world by many students of ancient mystery schools, and has even been taught on earth for over 25,000 years, including a very special spiritual underground during the past 16 centuries. In spite of all this world has been dominated visibly by religious doctrines that have distorted the truth. We have to face that. The goodness of religion is not the goodness of God. Our material sense has buried and has obscured divine truth. And the spiritual doctrine, which we should have been learning, has been confused with human doctrines, scientific doctrines, religious doctrines, all having ignored spiritual truth. And it was not until, about 140 years ago, that the lost light was again rediscovered. And the seeds of a new spiritual age were planted. Today you see them blossoming all around you with vigor. And it is now possible, once more, for modern man to break the hypnotism that has confined him to a temporary lifespan in a temporary, imperfect body. First birth is your birth into mortal form. Second birth is your birth into immortal life and immortal form. And that is the mystical path of illumination which fulfills the will of God, restores the lost years of locusts, and lifts you into the glorious realm of Christ consciousness. You must have made the decision by now. And if necessary, you must make it again and again every day. And that is this. Are you spirit or are you flesh? Flesh is excess baggage. If you live as a fleshly organism, think as flesh, act as flesh, believe you and the world around you is made of flesh, you have accepted a temporary sense of life. You have accepted temporary pleasures, temporary security, temporary happiness. Your joys will be mingled with sorrows. Your successes in one direction will balance out by failures in other directions. And finally, all your possessions will be turned over to the probate court. And even the dear human body that you thought you were living in will be taken away. All you can take out of this world is your consciousness. Life in flesh is responsible for every tragedy of human existence, for every up and down, for every gain and loss. And even while we are lifted up by a sense of progress, we find that our lives in the flesh are not really free. We're dominated. We're held down by physical forces beyond our control. Our bodies are vulnerable. At times our health is not stable. Our pressures and responsibilities multiply. Our energies diminish. And that proud, unlimited vigor and enthusiasm of youth one day becomes punctured by a very sober realization that we're only beginning to repeat ourselves. We seem to have run out of options, and the newness of our lives loses its fine edge. We begin moving in grooves. We're held there by habit and necessity. Even our decisions are made for us by forces outside ourselves. And we may try to tell ourselves that we can conquer these forces, but we really know the truth, and it is that until we experience our permanent self, our permanent spiritual identity, until we evolve in consciousness from this temporary physical body to the mystical body of spirit that never dies, no matter what we do or say, we remain prisoners of the flesh. And we try to survive by building mortal lives that we know must end. Now that's the big sleep. And it's not for spiritual students. Here are some more sobering facts. The excess baggage that we want to get rid of. During this next minute, 1 minute, 108 human bodies will die. I know it's not a desirable subject, but it's more desirable to remove the possibility of death. It's important to know that every hour, 6,500 human bodies die. Every day, 156,000 human bodies die. Does it make you think a little bit about why? And then here's the big one. In this year 1979, which we think is part of a great scientific age, the age of satellites, the space age, in this year of 1979, 57 million human bodies will die. Again in 1980 and each year thereafter, another 57 million human bodies will pay the same price. And you and I, having no control humanly, will simply wait around with the rest of them until we too become dead statistics, unless we move into the second birth. Perhaps it would help to know why we die, from a different standpoint and medical opinion. Perhaps if we knew why we live under the constant fear of death, in the shadow of death, and under the fear of physical conditions, if we could understand the why of it, we would have an opportunity of overcoming it. Why, for example, if God is life, why do human beings die? Do you know what Paul said about that? He gave us an answer, a true answer. And it was so shocking, so beyond the concept of the human mind, that for the past 19 centuries, the mind of man has pretended that Paul never even said a word. Religions have actually put cotton in their ears. They have stuffed their ears so that they will not hear Paul's words. And you can say the same about educators and philosophers and scientists who have turned away, who prefer something less revolutionary, less disturbing than the truth. But Paul's words refuse to go away. And after every human scheme for survival or salvation has been tried, and the death rate continues, we will discover that however shocking Paul's words may have been, they were not his words at all. They were heaven sent. And they were sent to lead us into our permanent self, where the experience of death is impossible. If you live in human flesh, said Paul in Romans 8, verse 15, you must die. Nobody wants to hear that, do they? We'd rather go right on living in human flesh and dying. But I tell you, Paul knew whereof he spoke. And if you look closely at his words, if you live in human flesh, you must die. There's more there than meets the eye. Because Paul is saying, number one, that all human bodies are separated from God. And this separation has nothing to do with your goodness or your badness, with your youth or your old age. It doesn't make a difference at all if a body belongs to a minister of the church or a member of the mafia. If it's a human body, it will die. And death will always come under different disguises. But always, behind the symptoms that cause death, there is only one true underlying cause. And Paul said it in this statement: the natural man, that means the natural human body, receiveth not the things of God. Why doesn't the natural human body receive the life of God, the grace of God, the power, the love, and even the protection of God? Why do 108 human bodies die every minute and 57 million human bodies die every year? Face this now. It's important to your attainment of the second birth. The life of God is not in a human body. And the life of God does not animate a human body. The life of God does not sustain a human body. And all the religious prayers on earth cannot change these unalterable facts. Maybe you never really realized it before. But today, please do. And I think Joel is a good authority for us to follow at this point. And so let's take a peek at the book called Spiritual Interpretation of Scripture. Page 211. That wonderful chapter called The True Sense of the Universe. The secret, says Joel, which has been so rarely understood, is this. The life which you behold in man, tree, or animal, is not the life which is God. Human, animal, or plant life is not a manifestation of God, and therefore is not immortal, eternal, or spiritual. The life of material man or flower is mortal sense objectified. It is a false sense of life, a false sense of the life which is real. Now that's the same as Paul's statements, paraphrased another way. Do you really hear what Joel and Paul are saying? They are saying that the life of God is not in your human body. And they are saying that the life of God is not in the bodies of your children. And you cannot walk by on the other side. You've got to understand that and accept it. You've got to realize that because the life of God is not in your human body or in the bodies of your children, that those bodies are at the mercy of the false powers of this world. They are telling us why human hearts fail, why human brains suffer strokes, why human arteries harden, and why all human bodies are not divinely governed. They are giving you priceless information that every human body on earth is separated from God until the second birth. And as a parent, you must see that because of this truth, children are victimized by multiple sclerosis or muscular dystrophy only because their mortal bodies are separated from God. Now that's different than a scientific viewpoint or a religious viewpoint. That's a mystical viewpoint. And the deeper meaning is that even healthy bodies are separated from God. That humanhood itself, living in a human body, constitutes separation from God. And that separation continues right up to the moment of death. unless the individual conquers the illusion of flesh and attains the realization of his or her immortal, permanent body, his mystical body, which is made of divine life substance that never dies. That's why we're emphasizing that you must find your mystical body and live in it instead of in your human body. And the facts may be blunt, but without these facts, our entire human race has been paying the price of ignorance. While you are at home in the body, says Paul, you are absent from the Lord. Now, what does at home in mean? It means while you are living in the body. And what does absent from the Lord mean? It means you are separated from God. Now, that truth has been covered up. It has been covered up by ignorance in some form or another in the great minds of many of our leaders throughout the world. And literally, that cover-up has pulled a shroud over the face of mankind. It has veiled the light of God from billions of worshipers who thought they were living in bodies created by God, who are unaware that immortal spirit, immortal God cannot create mortal bodies of flesh, and that immortal spirit, immortal God cannot enter into mortal bodies of flesh. This very day, 1,000 surgeons in this world will cut into 1,000 human bodies to repair them. And why do these bodies need repair? Because God did not create them. And because they are therefore separated from God. What God did not create is separated from God. In Chicago, why did 271 bodies fall out of the sky and 2 or 3 more on the ground join in the carnage? Because they were separated from God. Not one of these bodies, not one of these minds in these bodies knew how to be absent from the body, and therefore they were not present with the Lord. And that's all it would have required. One passenger, just one aware of the infinite mystical body of spirit, would have made that DC-10 safer than the lawn of the White House. Every human disaster on earth reveals the truth that the body of man is separated from God. The body of the human race is separated from God. Every disease, every discord of a human body emphasizes this breach. And this is that big sleep. Blindly. In our search for peace and survival, we have ignored this immovable truth. We pretend. We like to pretend that our bodies are images of God, that our bodies are created by God. We like to pretend that our human bodies can find the way to God. And we like to pretend that the power of God will lift us out of this chaos, out of confusion, out of hatred, fear, frustration, insecurity, out of war, out of radioactivity, out of terrorism, and out of the moral irresponsibility that pervades many quarters of the globe. We like to think that the 1,000 conflicts that control man against his will somehow be dissipated by divine power, that God will smile upon us and bless these human lives. But we are wrong. God will not help a human being. Face it. Those who are in the flesh, those who are in human bodies, can never please God as long as they remain in human bodies. They can never even know God as long as they remain in human bodies. And they can never enter the kingdom of God. This is Paul's statement to mankind. Every individual still living in a human body, while declaring himself to be a born-again Christian, is denying Paul's statement, is denying this mystical instruction by the founder of more Christian churches on earth than any other man. We actually perjure the words of God if we teach the untruth. And the untruth is that anyone living in the flesh can please God. For as Paul says, as long as we are at home in the flesh, we are absent from the Lord. And that's how Paul identified the universal problem of man. But he also identified the solution to this problem. And it was not a hearsay solution, an untested solution. It is, in fact, the only solution that works. Because it is a solution that pleases God. It is a solution that enables us to know God. Whom to know? All right. Is life eternal, not death? And so listen carefully again to what Paul says about the solution. Awaken from mortality. Awaken from bodies of flesh. Awaken from bodies that die. Awaken from bodies that God did not create. Bodies that God does not respect. Bodies that can never walk in the creation of God or live under the grace of God. Rather, says Paul, should we be willing to be absent from the body and present with the Lord. Did you hear that word, willing? If you are unwilling to be absent from the body, you will remain absent from God, absent from the powers of God, absent from the love and grace of God, the eternal life of God. But if you are willing, then be assured that you have passed one of the greatest hurdles to union with God. Your willingness to be out of the body, not for a minute, not for a day, but to consciously eliminate the concept of human flesh, enables you to move into the great adventure of finding your eternal, deathless, painless, perfect, mystical body of spirit. Let's be still a moment before we move into lesson, I think it's 13. Yes, that was 12. Let's just hold a quiet. I think at this point, if we could stabilize and set down certain unchanging facts, that you could use these facts for meditation subjects. So, in lesson 13, when you go over it, take these facts one by one and make them individual meditations. I may run them together into a group of meditations as we have done several times before, but I think you'll know exactly what to do. The important part is that there are certain ground rules which must be observed if we are going to live consciously outside physical form. The first might be that no matter what you do, whether you live in physical form or not, there is an invisible you. And this invisible you is never going to die. Doesn't matter how much pain there is in the visible you, that pain is never in the invisible you. It doesn't matter if you find difficulties in this world, that if you are limited or lacking or unemployed or sick or divorced or whatever it might be, whatever upheaval comes, it's never functioning in your invisible self, your invisible life, your invisible body. That's fact number one. And so please, make that the subject of a meditation. Get to know your invisible self. You know how we are. We think of ourselves as minds and bodies, human organisms. And when you get through an entire day and look back at it, you find you behave like a human being. You've tried to find ways to bring pleasure to the body and to dodge pains that might come to the body or problems. And you've moved into sleep. You are not body. You are not mind. You can see it better perhaps if you think of a rose bush putting out roses. And here's a dead rose now. You don't throw the rose bush away. And that's because you know that rose bush is going to put out more roses. In other words, you're not accepting the rose, you're accepting the life of the rose bush rather than the form of the rose. You enjoy the form of the rose, but you really are sowing to the life of the rose bush. You believe in it. You know that when the rose dies, the life of the rose bush remains alive. And we want to go even deeper with ourselves. When this form dies, your life remains alive. And deeper still, your life that remains alive is the life of God. And that possibly is your second fact. God is life. But God is all life. There is no other life. Now, a life that dies is not the life of God. When the life of your body dies, that is not the life of God dying. And so if that's the life you're living in right now, you're living in the wrong life. That's not your life. The life of your body is not the life of God, but you are. Meditate on this. The life of God is the life of you, and your authority for that is the Christ teaching that the only life there is the life of God. His life is the life of all men. You can thank John for that statement. Your life is the life of God, and even when the life of form is no more, your life is alive. So work until you are aware of the life of God as your life, and make the conversion so that you are living as the life of God and not as the life of this form. Until you do that, you can see you're separated from the life of God. in that separation from the life of God, because of a consciousness which believes in only the life of your form, everything that God is denied to you. Just think if your blood was made of water instead of blood. Your body would need certain nutriments, and you couldn't get it out of water. You'd need blood. The life of God is your real blood. And if you're trying to live on water instead of blood, you have the cause of every human problem. Your God life is the only life there is, and the human sense of life is imitation. The light shining in the darkness is the life of God. It is your life, and it is eternal. It is unaffected by the things of this world. It is unaffected by inflation, unaffected by shortages, unaffected by discords and diseases. It is your life, though you may not have known it in your sleep. Awake from the sleep of a life that is not the life of God. Do not accept the life of this form as your life. That is the mystical truth number 2 that you must dwell with until you can shout it from the housetops. I and the Father are one life. The life of God. I am. Thou couldst have no power over me. You can only have power over the false sense of me. God is invisible. God life is invisible. Your God life is invisible. And it is always alive. And if you have heard those words within your heart, you will know that today, this moment, you can sit still and trust that invisible God life to function as you. It is your source. It is your source of all that you will ever need from now unto eternity. It will never age. It will never weaken. It will never diminish. It is your true life. And it cannot work in you and for you if you are accepting the life of a human being. If you are separating yourself from it, you are living in that duality, which brings about those 157 million, 57 million deaths every year. I tell you, if you could walk up and down the hospitals of this world, and if you could be the consciousness of every person lying there, knowing for them that the invisible life of God is their life, they would spring up. The dead would rise out of their graves. These mortality charts would be overturned. We would discover why we have suffered needlessly throughout the centuries, confusing human life, a human bloodstream, with divine life, and never knowing that the life of the rose that dies is still alive as the life of the rose bush. The life of this body that dies wasn't us. We are the life of God, the eternal rose bush, ever giving life, ever sustaining life. We are not a dying rose. We are the Son of God. God is immortal. God has no human body. The Son of God is immortal. The Son of God has no human body. Immortality begets immortality. Non-physicality never begets physicality. Your invisible life is God, and also your invisible body. In order to experience your invisible life, you must live in your invisible body. For the infinite life of God flows through your infinite, invisible, mystical body. It is important to realize that your mortal life is only a sense of life and was not produced by the immortal life of God. It is important to know that the life substance of God did not produce your mortal body. Paul tells you that you have another body. You have a building of God not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Not made with hands means not made of human flesh and not visible, not material. You have an invisible building of God. You have an invisible body, Paul is saying. And it is not temporary, it is eternal in the heavens. And where are the heavens? The heavens are your Christ consciousness. In your consciousness of truth, you will discover you have an invisible body that lives forever. Now, the life of God formed this invisible body. And that invisible life of God flows through this invisible body. You have an invisible self with an invisible body and an invisible life. And meditate upon this with the realization of fact number 3. You have no other self than this one invisible life body self. Do not make the error of thinking that you are both visible and invisible. There is no such you. You are not the visible body. You are not the life of that body. The visible life, the visible body, is not you. Because if it were, you would be separated from God. And therefore this comes to fact number 4. A beautiful fact. Dwell on it until you can shout again, yes, I agree. I understand. I feel it. And the fact is this, the life that dies is never you. It cannot be. The life that dies is not the life of God. You are the life of God. And the life of God is always alive. Don't wait to enjoy it 500 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 20 minutes from now. Acknowledge it in all your ways. Your invisible life and your invisible body are now alive and always will be. And this invisible life will always be your permanent divine source for everything you need, just like the blood in your veins nourishes the body. Your invisible life acknowledged, believed, lived in, accepted, worshipped, loved, will be the substance invisibly of everything you need in the visible world. I, your invisible life, I, your invisible body, I, your invisible Christ self, I can never leave you. I am unlimited. I am completely unaffected by the conflicts of this world. And I am always here to remove those conflicts, if you will but acknowledge me as your life, and not the life of the visible form. As you daily learn to accept this invisible life, it will replace dying flesh. Literally. And then as you extend this truth to your children, to all who live within the scope of your visible eyes, to every nation, and realize that the invisible life of one is also the invisible life of the other, you will be in the one invisible life. And that one invisible life is your Savior, yourself, the life of all men, the Christ of the world. In Egypt, in Israel, in all of Africa, in England and in Ireland, wherever there are conflicts between men, it is because there is no one there to recognize, to live in, to experience the one invisible, infinite life that flows perfectly, sustaining the one invisible, infinite, mystical body of spirit. That doesn't mean that you're going to throw away this physical sense of life. You're going to see the human body in a different way, that's all. You're going to see it for what it really is. It's a guide, a measuring device. It's a map. You look at it, and it tells you the quality of your consciousness. It is a mirror of your consciousness. And in that mirror you see the conflicts. And they tell you that you are living in the wrong life. If you didn't have this mirror, this map, this guide, this body to look at, you would never be able to locate your problem. But the minute the body shows forth some problem, whatever it is, whether it's in the body itself or its relationship with other people or the emotions that run through the body, whatever, your map is telling you, get back to your consciousness. That's where it's coming from. And now when you get back to the consciousness, you find a secret. That consciousness is separated from God. It doesn't know God aright. It's a human consciousness. It's a sitting duck for world thought. It's reacting. It's hypnotized. It's actually asleep. And in its sleep it is dreaming because it cannot control the dream. And that's the value of your body. It brings you back to that consciousness which is sleeping and allowing the body to live in these conflicts. And when you get to transcend that consciousness by knowing that you are the life of God, that these things in the body are not yours, these temporary problems are not yours, this temporary body is not yours, you're not going to need it someday, you know. And the sooner you learn that the only reason you have it is to help you purify your consciousness, the more grateful you will be for it, and the more intelligently you will use it. Of this world. It doesn't make sense to anyone who knows the truth, and yet in spite of that, this is the prevailing assumption throughout the clerical world. And it is these incredible superstitions that have hardened into what is known today as religious doctrine, imprisoning men in minds and hearts and bodies not created by God, living in an atmosphere of fear and hate and ignorance, with real truth hidden under a cloak of piety, and at the same time completely losing sight of God's many statements that His creation is always perfect, that His creation is perfect forever. Now that's where we begin in mysticism. That perfect creation is yours. That perfect creation is your sinless, painless, deathless, mystical body. And it doesn't have to be improved at all. It has never sinned. It has never lied. It has never cheated. It has never committed adultery. It does not have to be corrected or improved. It simply has to be lived in. It was that mystical body of Moses that delivered hidden manna to the Israelites in the wilderness. And it was the mystical body of Enoch that enabled him to walk right off the earth and to leave no physical body behind him. It was a breathtaking glimpse of the mystical body of mankind that gave Abraham the courage and the confidence to bind his dear son Isaac, to place him on a pile of wood, and to be ready to offer him as a burnt offering to God. As we take this from a material viewpoint, we lose it. But if we see it for what it was intended to say, as a dramatic symbol, as secret Spirit's way of teaching us that Abraham had reached the realization that God life is never in a mortal body. That's all it was saying. Spirit was demonstrating that in order to find your mystical body, you must be willing to cast your material concept of body into the flame of Spirit. Again, when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were cast into a fiery furnace, the prophet Daniel was revealing the mystical body of man, which can never be destroyed. And so a mysterious fourth man appeared in the fire, and the king said, "Who is this mysterious man? Why are these men still alive, and who is that fourth man?" And all the princes of the realm were assembled to see this great thing. Why did the fire have no power over the bodies of these men? Everybody was astonished. The hair on their heads was not even singed. Their coats were untouched. And there wasn't even the smell of smoke on them. Very few now or then discovered the identity of that mysterious fourth man. And that is because the language of Spirit was not understood. We were looking through material eyes. We were not listening within. Spirit was teaching that the fourth man is the one invisible body in which Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were living. The same mystical body that is destined to save all of us, all mankind, and to lead us safely through anything this world can offer, including nuclear radiation and including death itself. As we find that one mystical body, we walk the fiery furnace, we find the hidden manna, we find that we are not disturbed by the appearances of death that come upon us or seem to come upon our children. Rather, we stand in the one infinite divine life, the one infinite mystical body, and we see through the illusions of this world. As a matter of fact, every healing in the Bible is an esoteric teaching that disease, disaster, discord, and death are overcome by a transformation of consciousness from mortal body to mystical body, from visible life to invisible life. And we should also note that only after Jesus had revealed the mystical body of Lazarus was he ready to make the one great mystical body of himself visible to mankind. This was perhaps as extraordinary a demonstration as will ever appear on this earth. One of the great, vital, divine teachings in the history of all religions. And again, it has been dreadfully misconstrued by the sleeping clergy. Look again, and you find a teaching so powerful that it can change our present civilization. We have been taught by many that Jesus took John and Peter and James to the Mount of Transfiguration because they were the most prepared of all his disciples. Now there's another reason, even more important. And if you want to experience your own mystical body, you will have to have a better understanding of why Jesus took these three disciples. John represents love. Love without any form of condemnation. A love that sees the love of God even where the world sees evil. Pure love, without opposite. Peter represents faith. Faith in the power and presence of God. A faith, though, that is so great that even though Peter may not see God, even though God is invisible, that faith inspires deeds, because Peter's faith in the invisible divine presence enabled him to become, ultimately, one of the great teachers of Christianity. Now, James represents total commitment, the commitment of your human selfhood totally out of the way so that you can live in spirit without opposite. And it was James who first sacrificed his human life, as you know, and became a martyr in the cause of Christianity. Now, these three qualities, love, faith to perform deeds of divine purity, even without the evidence of a physical God or a presence of God, and then the commitment to spirit, these are your basic qualities, your basic equipment that enable you to move out of a dying body of mortal flesh into your immortal, mystical body of eternal spirit. So that's why James accompanied Peter and John, and the three of them witnessed on the Mount of Transfiguration one of the most important events in all religious history. Years later, recalling that very spellbinding event. The Gospel writers told us that we beheld His glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father. His countenance was altered. His face did shine as the sun. His clothing became whiter than white. We were eyewitnesses of His majesty. These are the phrases that have come down through the ages. And we ask ourselves, was that the whole story? Have we caught it? Have we understood why He charged them to tell no man what they had seen, until the Son of Man be risen again from the dead? Do we know what happened on that mount that could not be told until His resurrection from the dead? Perhaps we can try, at least, to go deeper than the mere words. Christ had awakened the 3 disciples from mortal sleep. He had lifted them above mortal sense, above material sense, above humanhood, above body consciousness, and now they were in soul consciousness. They were seeing what eyes cannot see that look out from a human skull. They were seeing soul pictures now, not mental images of the human mind. And with these soul pictures, instead of words, Christ was piercing the universal veil of illusion that has blinded man to the presence of eternal life. It's as if He was saying, now open your inner eye. Look through the eye of the soul. And now behold. Behold the invisible creation of God. You see, there were no longer 3 disciples there. There was the soul standing, looking into the 3 heavens. And there in the first heaven, the soul of the disciples saw Elias, whom we also know as Elijah. And Elijah was alive. He wasn't dead at all. As John the Baptist, he had been beheaded. But here he was, very much alive in the invisible, divine life that is ever present. And also, he had descended back into earth after he had once ascended as Elijah on a chariot. And so you see that Elias or Elijah could come and go, as they say, at will. And then in the second heaven, the soul of the 3 disciples saw Moses. And here the Hebrew patriarch was very much alive. And they saw Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. And Jesus was the one in the third heaven. But He wasn't Jesus anymore. He was no longer a physical body. Now He was Himself. He was the light of spirit. He wasn't contained in a shape. He was the very atmosphere itself without boundaries. Now in this soul experience, the disciples of love, faith, and commitment did not realize that they had experienced and entered the mystical body of all who walk this earth. They were in the Christ body whose substance is the very life of God. At that time they couldn't know that the life of this mystical body was the life of every man and woman who walks this earth. Nor could they even begin to suspect the eternal qualities of perfection that lay hidden in this invisible divine life, ready to bless all who have the vision and the courage to overcome their false sense of mortal life in bodies of temporary flesh. And so Christ said to them, "Tell the vision to no man until the Son of Man be risen from the dead." Let us stand now on this Mount of Transfiguration and see the miracle of truth demonstrated for you that day. With human eyes they had seen Jesus. Now they were seeing one direct line moving back into the invisible. They were seeing that Jesus visibly was this invisible self, which through soul perception he was now permitting them to see. He was demonstrating his mystical body. It had no place where it began in space or time. It could have gone back endlessly, and it came now out of the invisible, slowly becoming perceptible, first as visible light, and then finally as that which to some extent still resembled the man they had known as Jesus. All of that in one continuous motion without division. One. Now put your face and your body in front of that light and see yourself in the visible as a visible form, and now let yourself go back into the invisible, further back until you are light, and now back into invisible light. Feel all of it, going back into infinity, disappearing into that which no one can see. And now come out of that invisible. You are the infinite invisible coming forth into visible light, and finally into an appearance called man or woman. But all of it from the invisible out to the visible is you. In other words, when we look at you, we see only the tip of the iceberg. We don't see your invisibility, which is there. And so we look at your invisible and we form this visible concept we call you. And you do it about yourself and everyone you know. Feel this infinite invisibility of your being, because that is what the Mount of Transfiguration was all about. He was saying, John, Peter, James, this is you. I am demonstrating your mystical body as well as my own. And as you rest there, as you feel the glory, as you know yourself to be the infinite invisible, you are opening yourself to the teaching of Christ that you are invisible life in an invisible body of spirit, that you are eternal being right now, and that all this invisible universe here and now is you. Tell no man these things you have seen until the Son of Man be risen again from the dead. It has another meaning, you see. When you know yourself to be that living spirit, then the Son of Man rises within you from the deadness of the mortal grave that we live in. You become alive with the Spirit. And the rising of the Son of Man in you is your conscious realization of identity. And until it happens in you, what have you to tell? Tell no man until the Son of Man is risen again in you. Then with that experience, you can go forth living in your mystical body, trusting your invisible mystical life to go before you everywhere. And the light of your being will tell the world. Only the crucifixion was a higher point in the demonstration of Christ. Lazarus was restored to his mystical body and could walk out of a tomb. The life had never died. The invisible life was always living. And immediately after this was demonstrated, the Master took his disciples to the mount to show him how it had been done. He had simply brought forth the invisible light body into the visible. And there was Lazarus again. He was saying, do it yourself. And then to show that nothing could take away that invisible light body, he said, crucify the physical form you see, and you will see that I'm still here. Destroy this body temple, and in 3 days, I will still be right here showing you another body. Why? Because those 3 days are the 3 heavens you just saw. That's where I live. In the 5th, 6th, and 7th days of Genesis, we find the 3 heavens, the 3 invisible worlds, which are one world, which are your mystical body now. I think we can move now into our 15th lesson. I think if you want to write me about some of your experiences this past month, I would be very happy to learn what you went through. One woman wrote and said that on a trip to Texas, on a plane, they were told by the pilot that for the next 100 miles there would be a great deal of turbulence, and be prepared for it. They were going to go through it. They had no choice, or they decided that was the thing to do anyway. And so she went into her mystical body. She felt that she could not describe the joy of the experience because she wasn't in the plane at all, you know. And I won't tell you that the plane was in her either, because she was beyond a plane. She was in her invisible life over those so-called 100 miles. She was alert. She had a companion, her husband. He too felt no turbulence. They didn't feel this rush of air you get when you came down. Nobody on the plane seemed to be aware of any turbulence, and when they landed, neither she nor her husband felt the contact with the earth. And the trip would not have been half as enjoyable if this pilot hadn't come through to tell them about the turbulence for 100 miles ahead. because it made them find their mystical bodies. Now for the last 30 or 40 days we've been working with weather. There was a great deal of work put on in certain areas, and hopefully we have had a successful series of meditations. At this particular point, right now, from this moment, or up to this moment, I'm not aware of any deaths that occurred because of weather conditions. I read about 2 in Indonesia, from an earthquake. 2 were killed about 20 days ago in Indonesia from an earthquake. But outside of that, even when I read about the fires, I read they were contained, and I looked and scanned each word in the print of the paper. Who died? Who died? Who died? They never reported a death. And so I like to feel, and hope it's true, that together we have been instrumental in unseeing weather conditions. Certainly we've learned a good deal, that we can be sure of. Now we want to continue those 8 o'clock meditations, and our subject is transportation. Airplanes, automobiles, ships at sea, people swimming in the ocean. Now we want to learn how to do it correctly, because in this world work, it must be repeated again and again, we are not trying to remove conditions. That's the best way to multiply them. And so catch this little trick or technique, which is very important, not only in these meditations, but in your healing work. Perhaps I'll review it from a personal body standpoint so you get the idea more readily. The person comes to you with a backache. They're moaning. And you love them. At least you want to get rid of it for them. And you've lost it right there. Now let's look back at the lessons today. We were talking about the mystical body and the invisible mystical life. The life of God. And so you know that the life of God does not have a backache, and the body of God does not have a backache. And that God is all. God is all life. God is the only body. There is only one body. Now where are you going to get rid of the backache? The minute you try to, you've denied the allness of God, the allness of divine life, the allness of the one infinite mystical body of spirit. You have come right under the hypnosis of matter. And now, hypnotized by matter, you're going to try to remove the backache. You're right back, seeing serpents in a tree in your backyard and trying to get rid of the serpents. And you can try all day. They won't leave the tree because they're not there. You can't get rid of that backache because it's not there. Maybe someday you can tell that to the patient. Right now, if you try to, they say, well, then what do I want to come to you for? If you can't get rid of my backache, I'll go to someone who can. There's a chiropractor who can do it. And there's someone else who can do it. And the medical profession knows all about how to handle backaches. And so, tell no man. Someday you'll find there's somebody you can tell. You can say, look, let's face it, you don't have arthritis. You think you have. You don't even have an ulcer, you think you have. Now, you can't do that with most people, but there are some you can do it with, and they'll listen to you. And don't be surprised if they finally agree with you that they don't have arthritis and don't have an ulcer. And it won't be because your mind is more powerful than theirs. It'll be because you have risen above the temptation to accept the appearance. And you may be thinking, well, that's pretty superficial stuff. Wait till we get into brain tumors. Wait till we get into other malignancies in the body. You can't dismiss those by saying you don't have them. Yes, you can. God does. God is too pure to behold iniquity. Is the Son of God any different? There is one life and one body. And that mystical body is your body, and it is the body of your patient, though the patient knows it not. And if you want to help, the only help you can give is to know the truth. And that's first step number 1 on our transportation meditations. Know the truth. Know the truth before the accidents. Know the truth that the life of God is not going to be in an accident. Know the truth that the life of God is all there is out there. That's all that's there. The life of God is where the plane seems to be with 273 passengers. Only the life of God is there. Only the mystical body is there with the life of God governing it. Know the truth that the life of God is where every driver of an automobile appears to be. There may be millions of cars on the road, but there is only one life, and you are the one who knows it. There is only one body, and you are the one who knows it. And that body can never be in an accident. That life can never smash up. Now, you're either in the mystical consciousness or the material consciousness. And during this month, we want to see that the life of God is where the ocean is. And everybody can be running to the beach and into the high waves, but only the life of God is there, only the one mystical body. And finally, it's the one mystical body in which this world appears to be. And it is your body. It is where the oceans are, where the sky is, where the automobiles are driving. And then when you're meditating during the July 4th weekend, by that time you should be ready, really in high gear, rolling along, knowing the truth so well that your work should show forth in this visible world. So let's go through a meditation or two. Let's catch the feeling. It's 8 o'clock California time. Here in Hawaii, we're back there at 5 o'clock now. Up there in New England, you're up to 11 o'clock, I think. And so on out to Alaska and Midwest and whatnot. We're all in the one mystical body governed by the one divine life. Now, in your practice sessions, before you get into the July 4th weekend, take your 13th lesson of this tape and really fine-comb it. Know it so well that all of the principles mentioned there are put into practice in this meditation. You're in the one invisible body. Just find your peace. Forget all the phrases. Forget all the truth you know. Find the peace of the one invisible body. My peace I give unto you. My peace. Not as the world giveth, I give unto you. There can be no death. We never heard of death. All we know is life. Life is all that is here. We are overcoming that last enemy. The last enemy called death. And now, while we're doing that, let's go a step further. Let's see what John meant when he said that the last enemy to be overcome is the second death. That's in Revelation, the 2nd chapter. He that overcometh shall not be heard of the second death. He had already disclosed that the eternal life of God is the life of all men. And you're knowing this now in this meditation. There aren't two kinds of life. There's only the life of God, which is the life of all men. And that's where you're living. The life of all men, whether they are driving a car or seated in a plane or swimming in an ocean. The life of all children, wherever they are. The life of this universe, the only life, is the life of God. Find your peace in that. And if you don't find your peace in it, you have not accepted the truth of it. What is that second death? The life of Jesus Christ, demonstrated by Jesus Christ, is the life of every passenger on every plane. The life of every motorist driving a car. The life of every passenger in a car. All transportation, air, land, and sea, is an image in mind. We are living in the one invisible life, not in a moving vehicle. Maybe the 4 billion on the earth have forgotten the divine life. Maybe all of us have. Because when we came into mortal flesh, we stepped out of our original divine life. We are all the one life and always have been. And then through mortal birth, we departed from the consciousness of eternal life. That mortal birth became dead to spirit through a false consciousness. That is the first death. All human birth is the first death in the eyes of the mystic, because it is a departure from the one eternal life. But we never did depart. We simply gave a sense of reality to a form, which we then continued to live in. And only when this form dies are we in the second death. John wanted us to know that. The first death he defined as human birth. The second death was the death of that which was born humanly. So birth is death number 1. The death of the mortal body is death number 2, and we can avoid the second death. If you become part of the first resurrection, says John, you can avoid the second death. And that is what we want to do in this meditation for the world. We want to show that the second death is unnecessary. We're only using transportation as a way of demonstrating to ourselves and to the world silently that the knowledge of the one invisible divine life everywhere, as your life and my life, accepted within, flowing now through your infinite, invisible, mystical body, is the only life out there. And when the glorious peace comes upon you, you are entering the first resurrection. We're going to do this every night at 8 o'clock. Through July 4th and beyond until you get the next tape, and we'll probably continue that so that we can have a different subject each month for our 8 o'clock meditation, right up to the seminar. Now then, let's look at John's statement a little closer. I think it's in Revelation 20 or 21. Yes, here it is. Chapter 20, verse 6. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power, but they shall be priests of God and Christ. As we rest in the one life, we are priests of God. We are the church of God. We are the living life of God. And something is happening within us silently, invisibly, changing the conditions of earth, removing the discords and disharmonies, the fears and the hates, making it impossible for this form to be guided by the world mind into those catastrophes that have engulfed the world. Beyond our meditation, as we practice this knowledge, something takes place within you day after day after day. A subtle transmutation, replacing your false sense of body into a total oneness with the infinite, in which your only body is that infinite body which appeared to the world as Christ Jesus, Christ John, Christ Paul, Christ Moses. The infinite invisible body comes into a visible sense of body, but it is a one infinite continuity of body, and all is the invisible life of God. And the second death is overcome. This translation from the natural body to the divine is the evolution of consciousness that becomes visible as your divinely governed body, which for Enoch and others became the passport to eternity. We are no longer going to continue as bodies of clay, subject to conditions of the world. Not if we're willing to give up those sense bodies in exchange for the mystical body. Now we have 3 more lessons, 3 more tapes that is, and there'll be about 10 or 12 more lessons on them. And their purpose will be to help you maintain the conscious, continuous awareness so totally that even when you're not trying to think about it, it's there. Just like you're conscious of air, without being conscious of it, you know it's there. Just like your hands move on the brakes and your feet on the pedals of a car without really taking thought. So we learn the meaning of take no thought for your body. Take no thought for your life. There will come a time when you won't have to take thought. A time when thought does its own thing and you are consciously only that body, only that life. Years and lifespans of habit as a human organism are thus erased from consciousness. The veil is lifted. Behold, the new self emerges without the taint of a second consciousness, a second body, a second life. Now these meditations on transportation are just as important for you as they are for those whom you are trying to walk with in the truth. And I think it's a good way to start your children off into this work a little higher than they have been. Let them meditate with you about transportation. Let them become conscious of the invisible life. Teach it to them. If necessary, tell them to tell no man. But let them enjoy this new vision of a life that never dies. Explain the difference between the life that never dies and the life of the body. They are less conditioned than you or I were, say 30 or 40 years ago, or maybe 20 or 10 years ago for some of us. They can understand more than we ever dreamed they can understand. And you'll see that our work on transportation has many important ramifications for you, your family, and mankind. The 13th lesson is a summary of the higher principles that you must practice. The 12th lesson is the giving up of the body. The 14th lesson is transfiguration, taught by Jesus to his 3 disciples, taught by Jesus to all disciples throughout the world who bring forth love, faith, and commitment, and taught by you to those who come within the perimeter of your consciousness, whether they know you or not. Be still and know I in the midst of you, I who can never leave you, I who go before you, I who make all the crooked places straight, I am your infinite divine life. And I function through your infinite mystical body of spirit. And you will discover the first resurrection taking place within you, that elevation of consciousness which dissolves the experience called the second death. Much love from Kauai. We'll see you again in about 30 days as we join again in oneness of the soul. Much love.
Most people spend their lives searching for what is already within them. If you're ready to awaken, subscribe to your miracle self and join thousands exploring the deeper truth of life, consciousness, and God. Subscribe to stay with us on this journey into truth, and I'll see you in the next teaching.